So let's look at the. Let's see what happens. Usually you can hit most of this stuff, the stuff that I put up, and it'll work because it's just files. But when you go down to eText, it'll probably blow up after you click on it. That's what was happening yesterday.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Okay, pop-up block up here. See the pop-up block? You need to right-click. Always allow pop-ups just in case. And it'll probably sit there and turn forever. Okay, this is what was happening yesterday. So if it's happening to you, it's not a big deal. You don't need to run around in circles. You don't need to email me 15 times. All you need to do is just chill out. I'll go to the whiteboard and we'll see. I'm going to see if the instructor resources is working, because I always have a plan B. And if I don't have a plan B, then we're in trouble. So let me go here and see if that is available. Let's see, I think we're starting in chapter 1, right? Somebody get your outline out. Yeah, it's working. So we have a plan B. Plan C was to turn off the projector and write on the whiteboard. That was plan C. So at least we got plan B. Plan D was to quit. So, yeah, I figured y'all would. Blame the Russians and quit, right? Beat you up, throw you in a van. Damn Russians. All right, now the first couple of, like I said, the first two chapters are reading. You should all be reading the assigned chapters. What are the assigned chapters? The chapters that are on what? Your outline. God, what a concept. And I bet you there's still people in here that haven't printed it out. Anyway, most of the stuff you have seen before because you have had probability and statistics. So it's not like you're reinventing the wheel. So with that being said, what is statistics? Capital S, statistics, is the branch of collecting, calculating, and interpreting numbers or data. So you can use whatever. See, you were able to get to these texts, wasn't you? Golly. I wasn't, so I guess it don't like me. Some of y'all, I think it does it after a long time, doesn't it? Probably does. Say again? Okay, so evidently they're making progress. Statistics is, and there's, if you want to, there's the long, drawn-out, I'm going to confuse you version. One thing you'll notice about me, I don't do this, okay? Capital S, the reason it's capital S, some of you English people, one word has two different meanings. What's that called? Anybody know? I don't know. It's called some kind of neon. I don't know what it is. No, I don't know. I have to look it up. Anyway, uppercase statistics starts with a capital S. It's the science of obtaining data, collecting data, calculating data, and dango interpreting. Okay? Lowercase statistic, lowercase s, is a parameter for the sample. Write that down. Lowercase statistic is a parameter, and under parameter put variable. What is a variable in math? Something you plug in, right, in a formula, right? So you can change statistic, change it into a variable. Variable used for the sample. Well, what the heck is a sample? Well, a sample is a smaller population of the big population. So if I ask you, how many people at Tri-County Technical College, how many students at Tri-County Technical College are in the Marlboro Club? Okay? Then I would use the Anderson campus for a sample. Okay? Because the Anderson campus is a smaller sample of Tri-County Tech. Now, why would you want to use a sample to predict for a population? because of the two most important things in our lives. And what are they? Time. Somebody said time. And money. Okay? So a lot of people say, what does statistics, why do you have probability of statistics? Some of you may have a parent that works at Michelin. Or some of you may have a parent that works at Lord Daniel or UPS or whatever. And they have what's called quality assurance. What's quality assurance? It's nothing but probability of statistics of the company on safety, on input, output, whatever the case may be. So there is a field out there that uses statistics. A lot of psychologists uses statistics. You got to know your way around. Now, taking this course, does that mean you're going to be a statistician? No. The reason you're taking this course is so when you're presented statistics, you understand the general knowledge of statistics, or if you present, you understand the general knowledge. It's not that you're going to master being a statistical genius or anything like that. This is just like the probability you took in high school. So when you move on to a second or third year statistics course, you know the terminology in the basic one level statistics. So lowercase statistic is the variable used in formulas for the sample, which is the smaller of the two. And they are usually letters. X bar is what? The mean. S is the standard deviation. So when you see a letter in a formula or a solution in a presentation, you know it's a statistic, lowercase, which means that it has to deal with the what? The sample. Statistic, lowercase, sample. Remember that. Statistic, sample. So if I put up X bar is equal to 28, then you know that's a sample, mean, because it's X, because it's a letter. Well, then what's the alternative to a sample? The population. The population parameter, P, parameter, and that's what that is, a parameter, is the variable used in a population formula. And it is usually, anybody want to take a guess from your probability before? It's not a letter, but what kind of letter? Greek letter. Mu, sigma. Mu is the population mean. Sigma is the population standard deviation. Now, why do you need to know these two things? So you don't sound ignorant when you're in a presentation or somebody is presenting to you and saying, look, here is the mu. Mu is 28. X bar is 26. And right then, as somebody in the audience, you know that 26 is the sample and 28 is the what? Population, mean. That's why you need to know the difference between a parameter and a little lowercase statistic. The variables used in a sample, the variables used in a what? Population formula. Capiche? And that's what all that says right there with the uppercase statistic. Uppercase statistic is the science. And there is the population and the sample. So at the population, you could put all campuses. Sample, you put AC, Anderson campus. And then, of course, U would be the individual. Of course, the individual is a good place to start as far as a survey or a sample, but you have to do more than one person. That's why you have to watch out for a lot of newspaper polls, media polls, because sometimes they can be subjective. What's subjective? Trying to get their point across. Okay? If you see a poll and they say, this is a national poll, and it's only surveyed 100 people, you might as well just crumple it up. Why?
It's not a big enough sample.
not a big enough sample, because 100 people compared to 32 billion or billion, or however many, you have to look it up. A lot of people in the United States. 100 people is not a national poll. Okay, that's why down at the bottom of all polls, you'll see N is equal to and margin of error is equal to. Anything above 3% margin of error, throw it away, because that means chances are their sample is not big enough. Okay? Again, why do you need to know that? Because you're going to do this? No, because when you're looking at a poll from now on, hopefully you'll look down at the bottom. If it doesn't have anything, then it's worthless. If it has N is equal to 12,000 and margin of error is equal to 2%, then you know it's a good poll. Okay? So that's the difference between a population and a sample. This is very important because a lot of people don't realize the difference between the two different statistics, okay? Two different fields. Okay, so write this down, please. And I appreciate y'all paying attention and not, because half of learning is paying attention. So I appreciate y'all paying attention. Descriptive. Descriptive statistics, and you don't have to write all that down. Just write down test scores. What do you mean test scores? How long have you been paying attention to your test scores in school? Somebody take a guess. How long? Since what? The 6th grade? 6th, 7th grade? Because that's when you started learning how to what? Figure your grade. I made a 72, made a 75, made an 82. I average those up, divide them by 3. That's descriptive statistics. It's where you organize and what? You obtain, you organize, and you calculate. That is descriptive. Well, what's inferential? You do the same thing, only it's with somebody else's stuff. Let's say you go out and you go to the DOT and you pull up all the drunk driving wrecks in the last year. Is that descriptive or inferential? Because you're using somebody else's data. Simple as that. You can do the same stuff, only inferential is when you pull from somebody else's data. Okay? And there's a parameter. Parameter goes with population. Parameter is the variable used in formulas for the population, to calculate things for the population. And lowercase statistic is sample. Sample, statistic, lowercase. Population, parameter. And all you got to remember then is the lowercase statistic is a letter. And what is a parameter? A Greek letter. So if you see a Greek letter, you know it has to do with the population. If you noticed, I repeat myself several times. If you hear me repeat something several times and you know I hate repeating things, then chances are that's a what? A test question. Duh. You'd be surprised at how many people say, what's going to be on the test? I have no earthly idea. All three of everything I've shown you so far is going to be on the test. If something comes up on this slide that's stupid, I'm going to tell you it's stupid and you don't need to worry about it. Okay? And I'm not going to go through this because I think most of y'all know how to, This basically, what is 86.4% of 250? I'm not going to worry about that. That's not a test question anyway. I'm not going to ask you. That's something that's silly. Okay? I'm not going to go through that because I'm not going to ask you that on test. And I'm going to go through that. Variables. Y'all know what variables are. They're what's in formulas. Okay, here we go. Write those down. Qualitative or quantitative. And then I want you to write above that or below it. I want you to put quotation marks. Quality, not what? Quantity. Because if you remember quality, not quantity, you'll remember the definition between these two. My mother, of course, like all mothers, is a great cook. Okay? She makes a chicken salad that I wish I could make because I would sell it, okay? It's not that chicken salad you get in the grocery store that tastes like goo, all right? That stuff's nasty, all right? But it's a real good chicken salad. Now, my mother makes it, and she makes it by, the mixing bowl, which is a very small amount, so it's very, very good. But what if she started producing it in mass quantities? Well, the quality would go what? Down. It would decrease, because then you get, all this stuff, and it's just not the same. Now, you think of something that you make, whether it's cooking or something. What if you had to make it 15,000 times a day? Would the quality go up or down? Probably would go down, because then you get tired of making it. Qualitative. Blondes, brunettes, redheads. Write that down. What's qualitative? It's based on category. Okay? Blondes, brunettes, and redheads. Blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes. Those are all qualitative data. Qualitative, it has to do with category. If you can put it in a category. It's not calculatable. You cannot calculate qualitative data. Whereas quantitative data has to do with nothing but what? Numbers. And it is, you can calculate quantitative. Quantitative data is your weights, your heights, your shoe sizes, your ages. All of that is calculatable. Usually, if you can get a mean from something, or a standard deviation, it's quantitative data. Two good test questions right there. So make sure you know the difference. Most of you, 90% of you, know the difference. That's your first yawn. I saw it. Okay? Most of you know qualitative data versus quantitative because you've had probability and statistics. I know that. Okay? I got several degrees. I realize that. But some of you may never had it. So if you didn't, remember blonde, brunettes, redheads, and quantitative would be everything else. Shoe sizes, ages, heights, weights, that kind of thing. Okay? Social security numbers. Which one? Qualitative. Why? Does your social security number different from hers? It may be different, but mathematically, is it different? No, it has no mathematical meaning. Area code. Qualitative. What does area code tell you? What part of the country you live in? Does it tell? Does 843? Is it any numerical difference from 803? No, there's no mathematical meaning. So those are two trick questions you might see on a standardized number 2, standardized test, or GRE, or some of you know what a GRE is. Get you into master's, get you into whatever, graduate school. Okay. Some of you taking a nursing, what is it called? Practicals. You have to take nursing, you have to take a test. I don't know, it's called
Isn't it the PRN?
What's it called?
I think it's the PRN.
It's some kind of test. I can't remember what it's called right now, but you may be right. That kind of question would be on there. What about area codes? Area codes is qualitative. Just remember, put beside qualitative, or whichever, no mathematical meaning. If the number has no mathematical meaning, it is qualitative. Area code is qualitative. Social security number is qualitative. Your phone number is qualitative. Why? Because if your phone number is 4055 and your phone number is 3332, is there any difference mathematically between the two? No, there's no mathematical meaning. So it's qualitative. Some of y'all said quantitative. I heard you. It means you're a failure. And there you go. There's some nationality. That's qualitative. That's pretty simple. You can put that with blonde, brunettes, and redheads just like that. You can say, okay, that has to do with color, or it has to do with, how you talk, or, if you talk you know, I'm not good with accents, but if you had a certain accent, somebody would say, oh, you're from so-and-so, okay? That's qualitative data. That's easy to remember. But if you throw something like, well, I was going to say Social Security, but they don't even put that. They just throw that on you on the test. So household income, quantitative, because 50,000 here, is that different from 75,000? Yes. So if it has mathematical meaning, then it is quantitative. And you feel good about yourself. So make sure you write those down. Those are 5 good. I did hit record, didn't I? I hope I did. Okay, so that is the list of quantitative and qualitative data. Discrete and continuous. Somebody tell me the difference, in layman's term, if you can, between discrete and continuous. Yes?
Discrete has an end in sight, and continuous is like never ending.
Wow, thank you. I've asked that question several times over the years, and nobody has ever been able to answer it, or they won't. That's right. Now, a good way to remember it is like your rational and irrational numbers. Your rational numbers, what's 4 divided by 2? 2. What's the square root of 2? It doesn't end, like she said. It doesn't have an ending. Pi. What's the last digit of pi? I'll give you a $100 bill if you can tell me the last digit of pi. Don't even try it because you can't. There's no pattern. There's no last digit. It keeps going and going. One last digit this time will be 1. The next time you calculate it, it'll be 3. The next time you calculate it, it'll be 8. The next time you calculate it, it'll be 2. There's no pattern. Okay, so there's several things you can say for discrete. 1, it can be located. It has an ending. It has a pattern. Countable. That's the key word. Countable. What does countable mean? You can count it. How many eggs are in a dozen? That's discrete. How many people are in this classroom? 24, I think. 26. That's discrete. Then somebody give me an example of continuous. Continuous would be the last digit of pi. Well, that's not good enough, okay? Something not countable, measured. Keyword, measured. Somebody give me something that's measured. Weight is continuous. Why? Okay, ladies, I'm going to pick on y'all because guys don't go to the doctor because they don't need to. All right? They think they don't need to. Girls, how many times you gone to the doctor and you had the dreaded weigh-in and you weigh 100 pounds at home, but the doctor's scale says you weigh 120? How many times has that happened? Guys, how many times has it happened to you? Okay, y'all not going to talk to me? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't really care though.
Well, nobody really cares. You will. You will. Okay? You will, girls. You will. This is what you'll do. You'll tell the doctor your scales are not right. Why? Because the scales are different. What if I told you to go outside and measure that fire hydrant down there? There's a fire hydrant somewhere in the parking lot. Okay? And I had a box of measuring devices. Some of them are measuring tapes you pull out like a carpenter's tape. Some will be a fold out. Some will be yardstick. Some of y'all will be a digital because you can't read a ruler. Sad. Anyway, the whole point is, how many people would get the same measurement? Not everybody, because some people can't read a ruler, so they just say, okay, 3 foot, and it's 3 1/4 inches, okay? But you can't read 1/4 inches, so you just say 3 foot. Some of y'all would go down there and dig down in the dirt to where it meets the water pipe, okay? And you would measure there and get 3 1/2 feet. You see what I'm saying? Measurements are continuous because there is no end. Okay? If I tell you to pour me a cup of water, how many different quantities would I get? You would get a lot, because some of y'all can't read a measuring cup. And some of y'all would just go get a coffee cup and fill it full of water, and that's not a cup. Okay? Measuring, anything having to do with distance, anything having to do with weight, anything having to do with height, anything having to do with volume, area, anything like that has to do with continuous measurement. Capiche? Now that is a question on the test, and for some reason y'all miss it. I don't know why. One has to do with counting, the other has to do with measurement. If I ask you to go out and count the cars, discrete. If I tell you to go out and measure the height of that tree, continuous. Measure. I didn't say count, I said measure. Anything that has the word measure in it is continuous. Anything having to do with counting is what? Discrete. But y'all get it wrong on the test. I don't know why. It's the Russians. Number of children, discrete. Household income, continuous. Why? Because some people don't report what they bring in. Come on now, if you think you work for the Internal Revenue Service and you go and you try to find out what people make, do you think a lot of people turn in what they make? I don't. If I was to sell one of my steers, okay, to somebody like you, okay, you want to buy a steer and you sell it, and I sell it to you for $500. You give me cash. Am I going to say, oh, IRS, here's $500 cash? Hell to the no. What do people turn in to the Internal Revenue Service? Whatever's on paper. So, are you going to get a true reading of what people make? No. Because Bobby could sell, you see these people putting stuff on Facebook all the time. I'm going to sell my child. They selling this, they selling that, they selling this. People sell anything. Coffee pot. Here's a coffee pot. I don't use it anymore. $25. Okay? They're not going to report that to the IRS. Household income is going to be continuous. Daily intake of whole grains, continuous. You actually sit there with a measuring cup or a scale and measure what you take in every day. You're weird. And qualitative data, we're not getting into that. Now, the qualitative doesn't have discrete because it is discrete. Why? Blondes, brunettes, and redheads. Is there any measuring there, or do you just count? You count. So the qualitative data isn't going to have discrete or continuous. But the quantitative can be. Give me an example of a quantitative discrete. Ages. Can anybody in here be 23.75 years old? No. You don't read. Now, some of y'all, when you're trying to get to a certain age, will say, oh yeah, I'm 20 and a half. I'll be 21 in 6 months. No, it don't go that way. How old are you? You go to the whole number. Okay? So that would be discrete. Versus your what? Your heights. That would be continuous quantitative data. Anything measured is continuous. Anything counted is discrete. And somebody will miss that on the test. Okay, I'm going to you don't have to write, just be aware of these, okay? Nominal, ordinal, and the other two, there's 4 of them. I don't know why they don't put them on one page. Interval and ratio. 4 over ratio. Nominal is anything that has a name, a label, categorized. That could be your blondes, brunettes, and redheads. Okay? There is no, I said blonde, brunettes, and redheads. Could you say redheads, brunettes, and blondes? Yes. There's no order, okay? It's just a report, nominal. Ordinal means that it has what in it? Let's look at the last word, order. You don't have to write the whole paragraph. Nominal, pretty much blondes, brunettes, and redheads. Ordinal means order. Who came in first, second, and third in the race? Or how many times, how many A's and B's and C's do we have in the class? That's ordinal, because there's an order. Blondes, brunettes, and redheads is not an order. Yes, sir.
Names go in the ordinal?
Yes. No, not names. Names would be nominal.
Not like alphabetical order?
Well, you'd have to specify that. If I just said names in the class, that's nominal. But if I said alphabetically, then it would be ordinal. So you got to, and one of the things about statistics, besides paying attention in class, what do you need to do in statistics? You have to read the question. Sometimes I will not read the question when I'm doing one in class, and I'll forget to do something because I didn't read. That is the biggest, paying attention and reading the sentence, reading the question is two of the biggest problems in statistics for teaching, okay, that I get from students, okay? I don't know why that came about, but anyway. Interval. A value of 0 in the interval does not mean the absence of the quantity. And a value of 0 in the ratio level of measurement means the absence of quantity. Age. Age would be ratio. Why? Because when you're 0 years, that means you ain't been what? Born yet. Okay? Now, some would argue, okay, some argue, and we're not going to get into that, of when you're actually 0 years old. Okay, we're not going to get into that. Interval could be a temperature. Does 0 means absence of heat? No. So interval would be temperature, because 0 does not mean absence of heat. 0 is just a scale that we use. I'm not going to push this a lot. I want you to be aware of it. I want you to circle it in your notes and say, be aware for later, because you might see it in another statistics course if you're going to be taking any statistics course. I'm not going to put that question on the test because sometimes it can be kind of frustrating for students. Okay? Here's a good idea. Number of snacks and soft drinks in vending machine ratio. Whether or not the school has closed campus policy during lunch, nominal. Class rank, ordinal. Anything having to do with rank or order is ordinal. Number of days per week a student eats lunch, ratio. What is an observation versus an experiment? Well, I like to tell students, you ever watched people before? I love to watch people, especially when you go to a populated place like a mall and just sit and watch people. Pick out the dumbasses from the normal people. I mean, you can sit there and you can pick out the people with issues. You can pick them out because they have a sign around their neck that says, I have issues. And they usually present it in a certain way, okay? Or their vehicle. Look at their vehicle. That'll tell you something also. Second thing, okay? What is an experiment? An experiment would be like a rat in a maze. Well, what's the difference? Well, when you observe, I'll tell you another example. Some of you ever seen these videos? They're not on, you can look them up. But you ever seen commercials or movies or whatever where they're recording a person sleeping, like sleep apnea? Like on a horror movie, they can't sleep because they're having nightmares. So they night vision the camera, and you can watch them while they're sleeping. You know what I'm talking about? They're usually green. Okay. Anyway, some of y'all are like, ugh. Anyway, that is an observation. Why is it an observation? Because what are you doing?
Just watch it.
You're just watching. It's kind of perverted, but you're just watching. Okay? What if every time somebody twisted and turned, you shocked them with a cattle prod?
Experiment.
That'd be an experiment. Why? Because you're not watching anymore. Okay? So remember the just watching. Some of you are like, oh, that sounds kind of creepy. Well, just remember, creepy watching goes with observation. Cattle prod, beating them over the head with a stick whenever they did something, that is experiment. Another example of an experiment. If I give 10 people this side, I give you a blue pill and tell you that blue pill is going to make you go crazy. I give you a red pill over here and tell you that it's going to make you fall asleep. Okay? That would be an experiment because I'm giving you something. I'm controlling the experiment. I'm not just watching y'all. Okay? Also, when you're giving out pills, there's a certain thing called a placebo. What is a placebo? A sugar pill. Okay? There's an Andy Griffith episode. Great example of, and I love Andy Griffith, I'm sorry, but that's my TV show. Either way, anyway, Emma, she thought she was going to die because she couldn't get her pills. Her pills only cost a dime. At the end of the show, they give her the pills and she feels better. What were the pills? They were sugar pills. She was a hypochondriac. Isn't that person thinks they're, yeah, that's why I'm not married anymore. Huh?
Like they have illnesses.
Yeah, that's why I'm not married anymore. Hypochondriac. A person that thinks something's wrong with them all the time. Okay? I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Anyway, the whole point is the sugar pill. You put the sugar pill, you take the sugar pill, and everybody's happy. Okay? I'm starting to see why people don't do good in math. I've got about 3 people in here that's not paying attention to a word I'm saying. Everybody gonna look around. Who is it? Who is it? I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna go through that. We'll go through examples later on. I'm not gonna go through examples. I'm not gonna go through that. Observational study. I'm not gonna go through that, but observation is when you observe. Experiment is when you interject something into the observation. I think we're going to be going into 1.3 here in just a minute because I'm not going to go over some of this. Now, you need to know what a census is. And if you don't know what a census is and you're out of high school, there is something definitely wrong. Either you've been deadheading it for the last, 3 or 4 years, or the school system has let you down. The census is something that's taken every what? Every 10 years. And what does it do? It obtains data. That's all it does. It's not a test question. It may be a test question on some kind of standardized test that you may take. I don't ask it. Because I think, I could ask it. Only one person, probably 1 or 2 out of all of y'all would get it wrong. I don't know how you would get it wrong, but somebody would. But it's something to put for later, okay? Because you might see it on a standardized test. Random sample. What is a random sample? There's only a real short definition for random sample. Random group of people, that's a good definition, but that's not the definition. You're a failure. Okay, what else? What? You're getting there. I'll go ahead and say it since you're hitting on it, okay? He said random, good. She said, what'd you say? Fair to everyone. Fair to everyone. The definition of a random sample, everyone has the same what? Chance. Write that down. Everyone has the same chance. So, I got a booklet of pink Post-it notes up here. I pass out a pink Post-it note to every one of you, and you take your pen, black pen or pencil, and you write your name on it, fold it in half, give it to me, and I put it in a fishbowl and pick your name for $100. Is that a random sample? Yes. What if 2 or 3 of y'all didn't like the pink color and you had some Post-it notes and you chose your Post-it note color and you wrote your name on it and put it in? Is it a random sample? No. Because the person that's picking the bowl, unless they can't see it, depends on a lot of things. But if it's a fishbowl, I would be influenced either to not pick the different colors or to pick the different colors. Remember, the reason for a random sample is to not show any partiality, which means bias. Okay? And usually after random sample, you see the word bias. I don't know about this book, but bias is a big word. Write that down. Bias and random sample. Random sample, everyone has the same chance. If everyone has the same chance, there's no bias. But if something happens to the color, what if you don't put in a color but you fold yours up 5 or 6 times and not in half? It's not random because I might be persuaded. I'll feel in there and I feel one that's balled up. I may pick that one or I may not pick it because of what? The way it's folded. If something, I don't care how minimum you think it is happening, it could subject the experiment to bias. Now, we're not even going to get into bias. We're not even going to get into it because there's too much that I could get into. But there is, bias in a lot of statistics, which gives you, again, subjective polls or subjective research. You can put out a subjective survey. You could put out a subjective survey. The first question says, do you hate Tri-County Technical College? Well, what's wrong with that question? It's leading. It's subjective. It's telling you to be negative about this question. The proper question would be, what is your feelings about Tri-County Tech? And you have A, B, C, and other. Okay? Do you spend a whole class, a whole semester, talking about subjective polling, subjective? Yes. If you are going to get your master's, okay, you're going to go through a whole class called what? Research. And that research tells you how to ask questions on a survey or how to poll. And you can't sit there and go, do you hate blah, 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 blah? You can't do that. So, random sample means no partiality, means everybody has the same chance. What's the difference between a random sample and a simple random sample? Simple random sample, put group. Okay? Instead of giving each one of you a Post-it, I give this group right here one Post-it, they write all their names down. The second group, third group, fourth group, fifth group, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So instead of having 24 pieces of paper, I have 10 pieces of paper. Group A, Group B, Group C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Is that a random sample? Yes, but it's a simple random sample because instead of you being an individual of 24 pieces of paper, now it's just going to be 10 pieces because you're what? You're grouped. You still have the same chance of being picked. So that's the difference between a random sample and a simple random sample. Comprende? Or comprendo, whichever one it is. And that's the random sample. Simple random sample, a group. And I'm not going to go through, the study of group consists of 5 students, and you can get different ones. I'm not going to go through that right now. I'm trying to get through all of the reading as much as possible. We'll get to plenty of math in chapter 3. What does the outline say we go through? 1.4 or 1.5? What does it say? 1.5? Okay. And then we jump to 2.
Yeah, it's 1.5.
Hold on a second. Boss just texted me, somebody wants to come to one of my classes. I must be drunk. All right. Stratified. Stratified is when you're talking about strata, meaning non-overlapping groups. A non-overlapping group would be Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians when you go to a voting precinct. A voting precinct is a good example of stratified because you have to declare what you are. Okay? Same thing if you just went with male and female. Okay? Male and female, despite what some people say, unless you're some kind of freak of nature, you're born with the equipment of one or the other. Okay? Now, there may be other things there, that I'm not talking about. I'm talking about physical equipment. You're born male or female. Okay? That would be stratified because there's no way you can say, oh, no, I'm not, no, as far as equipment. All right? Now, if you go into a voting precinct and you have stratified and you have male and female, then you've got overlapping. Okay, now overlapping is something different. That's called cluster, but we'll get into that. Stratified is when you don't have an overlap. A good example of an overlap, of a non-overlap, would be your political, whatever they're called, parties, okay, in a voting precinct. Now, the reason I use that is not because I'm political, which I love politics, but the reason I'm using that is because it is a very good example of people not overlapping. Okay? You declare yourself this, or you declare yourself that. You see what I'm saying? Hopefully you do. Okay? Stratified is non-overlapping. I have to keep check on my phone because I don't want some of y'all to go into, convulsions. And of course they use politics because it's the number one sample of a stratified. Systematic. Systematic, I like for you to put a star beside systematic because it's just as good as a random sample. Why? Because you don't know where you're going to fall. In other words, it's an easier way, not to the person, but to the person that's obtaining the data. It saves the two most important things. What are they? Money and time. Instead of surveying 10,000 people, you can cut that in half and still have the random sample by just surveying every 10th person or every 100th person, depending on how big your group is. That could be a test question. Random sample is a test question. Systematic is a test question. I usually don't ask stratified because stratified and cluster, sometimes y'all can get that mixed up, and I don't ask it too much. And there's a quality assurance does this a lot. You might want to put quality assurance beside systematic. If you work at Smith CD Manufacturing, where you manufacture CDs, okay, blank CDs to sell to everybody, okay? If you make those, are you going to pull every single one that comes out? No, you're going to pull every fifth or 5 out of this box, and there's a test question like that one in Unit 3. There's a test question like that in Unit 3, I think. I can't remember right now, but Unit 3, I think there's a test question. No, Unit 2 about CDs, and I'm going to show you that question. You pull 5 out of a box. If all 5 of those are bad, you send the box back. If they're not bad, you send them to Walmart, Target, and let them deal with the defective ones. Okay? But if they're all 5 bad, that means there's something wrong with a machine somewhere. You got to send it back to that department, find out what the problem is. Okay? So that's systematic. We're not going into that right now. That's math. We'll get into that later. Okay. Cluster sample is obtained by selecting all individuals with a randomly selected or group of individuals. Okay? A cluster sample would be like a voting precinct, but you're not asking what they are, you're asking how they voted. Like an exit poll. Why? There's no lines between, the only lines is who you voted for. There's no lines like Republican, Democrat, or age, above 18 to 21, 21 to, there's nothing. It's just who you voted for. So that's why sometimes it can be a little confusing between cluster and stratified. Stratified is there is defined fields and there's no overlapping. You could have somebody that's a Democrat that voted for John Smith and he's not a Democrat. You see what I'm saying? So there's no lines that say, okay, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. Stratified, there's lines. With a cluster, you're just going into a voting precinct, and instead of asking for Republican or Democrat, who'd you vote for? Like an exit poll. So an exit poll would be an example of a cluster. Or a voting precinct exit poll. And there's examples of the simple random sample, stratified, Republican, Democrat, male or female, systematic, every fifth person, and then cluster would be like, who'd you vote for? I'm asking all of you. Is this, I would say random sample and systematic are test questions, stratified and cluster for later. Convenient sample. Let's say, now listen to this scenario, and this will explain why you don't want to use a convenient sample. I work at a 80s rock radio station. I'm a DJ at an 80s rock radio station. And I send out a poll. I say, okay, for all you callers out there, call in and tell me what kind of music you like. What's wrong with that? What? It's biased. Why? Because who's going to be listening to my radio station? People that like what? Rock. So I'm going to have about at least 95% people call in and they're going to say, love rock, dude. You know, I love rock. You know, they're going to call in, deadhead as they are. They're going to call in and say, yeah, dude, I like rock. The whole point is, it's a convenient sample. Convenient samples are not worth 2 cents. Okay? Why? Because they're based on what? Convenience. If I ask somebody, if I stick my head out the window, and I see people, and not here because this is a school, but if I stick my head, if I live somewhere and there's a sidewalk, and I stick my head out to people, and they're walking down the sidewalk, and I ask, are you healthy? Well, if they are walking down the sidewalk, chances are they're either trying to get somewhere or they're what? Exercising. Well, walking. You know, some people walk for exercise. So that's a convenient sample. It's not going to be a good sample. So a convenient sample is probably, if I gave you a test question, it'd be which one not to use. And it's a convenient sample. There we go. Told you it was coming. Bias. And this is a good point. You know, we'll stop right after this because some of y'all start convulsing. It's pretty evident. There's only two, you might can think of any, but two, when you're talking about bias, I think of 2 jobs that are not biased. Anybody name one of them? A judge. And what's the other guy that judges? He's in a striped suit.
Referee.
A referee. Okay? Unless you're talking to a Clemson fan. Because if Clemson ever loses, it's everybody else's fault. Okay? That's why I don't like Clemson. I got 3 degrees from Clemson. I support the school. I give to the foundation. I support the players. I support the coach. But the fans are idiots. Okay? And I'm sorry, if you are a fanatic, if you support Clemson, that's different. But if you're one of these fanatics, I don't want to talk to you. Because if they lose a game, it's the Russians' fault, it's Bush's fault, it's the referee's fault, it's the cars outside the parking lot's fault, and it's everybody's fault. But if they win, they're the best team in the world. People say Georgia fans cannot hold a candle, and I got a lot of Georgia fans in my family. Georgia fans cannot hold a candle to Clemson fans as far as being out there, okay? There's no comparison. Georgia's my childhood team, so I'm a Dog fan in heart. I'm sorry. And I like to see Carolina choke every year, but Carolina's going through the same thing that Clemson went through a while back. They got to get off the hip if they want to get somebody to coach your team. You can't hire a coach from a losing team and expect to win. Look at Westside. They did it several times. They tried to hire a guy from Walhalla, and his record was like 0-11, 0-41. Doesn't work. Okay? What does that have to do? A referee is non-biased, a good one. A good judge is non-biased. A judge uses the law. A referee uses what? The rules of the game. Okay? They don't see color. They don't see team. They call it. And that's why they're very unpopular. You can think of other things that are you using one. MyLabs Plus. That's why I love MyLabs Plus, because I never grade your papers. MyLabs Plus doesn't see if you're male or female. It doesn't see if you're white, black, orange, and different, what other colors there are. It doesn't see if you're, short, tall. If it gives you an F, it gives you an F. If it gives you an A, it gives you an A. So that's one of the reasons I like MyLabs Plus. It doesn't see anything. So whatever you make is who? Is what? What you make. So bias is a very, very, and it's a very big word right now. I'm not going to say why, but it's a very big word. You think the way I think, you're okay. You don't think the way I think, and you're racist, you're a xenophobe, you're, what is the other words? Misogynist, what else? Homophobe. That's not the way you're supposed to be. You educate yourself, and however you educate yourself, you believe in what you believe. That's what's called freedom. Okay? When somebody starts telling you you're wrong, I had a case like this, and I'm in a land use board, and this is off the record. It's not really having to do with math, but it has to do with bias. Okay? I'm the chairman of the land use board in Anderson County. And I had this thing come up about a shooting range. Okay? I live beside a shooting range, out the city shooting range, out on Generosity Creek. Okay? And they shoot all the time. And there was a school, concealed weapons school, going up in an area, and I voted for it. And it was 3-2. There was 5 people on the board, and I voted for it. The reason I voted for it is because there's a hunting reserve in the same area, and they're not complaining about the hunting reserve. What do you do in a hunting reserve? Shoot. But they weren't complaining about that. They were complaining about the other. The long story short, at the end of, I'm not through yet. Okay. The thing of the, I'm not mad. I'm not through yet. The whole point of the story is, at the end of the meeting, one of the chairman, or one of the board members, turned around to me, I was one of 3 that voted, and said I was wrong. You don't tell somebody they're wrong just because they voted a certain way or because they believe a certain way. That really gripes my goat, okay? As a veteran, as somebody that lives in the United States, you don't tell somebody they're wrong just because they believe something, okay? That's when you get into the other areas of government that we are not in the United States. That's bias, okay? Do not be biased. You be neutral, okay? Especially when your job calls for it. If you're in a job, just like that land use board, I cannot and as a member of that land use board, I cannot show favoritism. If I know somebody, I cannot do it. It's a very difficult job to be down the middle. And sometimes you have to be. In a teaching position, you have to be. You can't show bias. And in statistics, can you sniff it out in a heartbeat? Yes. You can sniff out if somebody leans one way or the other. That's why it's very important for somebody like you that's learning about statistics to know how it's supposed to be done versus how it's done in the real world. Okay? That's when you get into subjectivity. Subjectivity is when I'm trying to influence you by my numbers. And that's extremely biased. You've got to be careful. What's the only thing that overcomes being biased? Knowledge. Knowledge is something that's very what?
Powerful.
Very powerful. And there's a lot of people that don't want you to be knowledgeable. I'm not talking about here. I'm saying in the population. Knowledge is power, and a lot of people don't want people to be knowledgeable. They want you to drink the Kool-Aid. All right. Explain the sources of bias in sampling. If I go out and I do this and I do this, but I say, okay, I'm going to pass out this survey. Do you hate Tri-County Tech? What's the main reason you hate Tri-County Tech? Tri-County Tech messed you up in the following what ways? And I give you 5 or 10 of those questions. What are you going to end up doing by the time you finish that survey? You're going to hate Tri-County Tech. That's bias. Okay? If you listen to one of the things I do, and I know I don't listen to the same radio station. I don't listen to local radio, local news because it's stupid. Okay? I listen to XM, and I switch every day. I switch to real country today. I'll switch to classical one day. I'll switch to 60s one day. I'll switch to 80s one day. 80s rock. Okay, I don't do this new country because it's not country, it's a joke. Anyway, I'll switch to several different genres of music. Okay? I'll do the same thing with a lot of things. Why? Because I don't want to be stuck to what? One thing. All right? That's the difference between being biased and not being biased. Again, knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the better off you're going to be. Now, what does that have to do with bias? Bias is the absence of knowledge, okay, in a lot of cases. All right? If you believe something that is subjective, is that because you're smart or because you lack knowledge? It's because you lack the knowledge of what's behind the subjective whatever. So bias is a very strong word. It's not prejudice. Okay? Prejudice is different. Okay? Bias is when you are affecting the outcome of a calculation, or you're trying to subject somebody to the way you feel about a calculation. Does that make sense? You need to be careful when you that's a very, very strong word, and it is used on a lot of tests. So make sure you know the difference. Okay? Sampling bias. I only pick, okay, I'm going to use an example. A lot of times, cigarette companies in the past have targeted young people between 15 and 25. Is that sampling bias? Yes. Okay? Non-response bias. Some people send out surveys, and if they get back no response, they will count that into their what? Their calculations. That's not right. Response bias, same thing, except with a response. You have different biases. And then you've got subjective biases. Technique used to obtain the individuals to sample tends to favor one part of the population or other. Watch your commercials. Watch your commercials. When do you have Rolex and Cadillac commercials? During golf matches. Why? Because most people that can play golf throughout the week and watch, they're usually pretty well off. Now, I like to play golf, but I ain't well off. Okay? I play at it. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about people that actually can play. All right? They're usually scratch golfers or better that can make money playing golf. All right? What about McDonald's commercials? Who are they targeted to? What about certain soft drink commercials? What are they targeted to? What about cigarette companies? What are they targeted to? Watch your commercials and see if you see something in the commercials. Do they target certain areas? Yes, they do. Big companies, they target certain areas. Sample, that's called, targeting a certain area or a certain population. Undercoverage. When the proportion of one segment of the pot is lower in a sample than it is in a population. It's not covered too much. Non-response. Do not respond to a survey, have different opinions from those who do. That's why it's always good to have the word other in your sample. Because you just can't say black or white. You need to say other. Or A or B, you need to have a C with maybe a blank or just other. Because people have different what? Opinions. That's why it's called opinions. You have an opinion, you're supposed to discuss it. Yes, I see where we can agree to disagree. Okay? You think the cloud is red, I think the clouds are blue. But we can agree to disagree. Just because you think the clouds are red does not mean that you're this or that or this or that, and that I need to hit you upside the head with a bat. That's redneck disorder. Interviewer error. These are what you go through with the research. I'm not going to go through this with you. I'm going to throw it out there for you so you will have it. But interviewer error, misrepresented answers. I've been talking about this with your surveys. Okay? Let me check the time. Okay, y'all are telling me it's time. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Order of questions. You don't have to write this down. But response bias. Data entry. Oh, I forgot to type in 50. I've typed in a 5. Do you think this is imagined, or do you think this is real? Oh, it's real. It's real. People will fake their information. And it's up to you that's 1.6, we'll stop. It's up to you as a what? As somebody that's being presented this material to say, wait a minute, that don't look right. That don't sound right. Hold on a second, and I'll call the roll. I know you're not getting up and leaving, but just in case you're thinking about it.